Hi guys, Mark Devo. Welcome to this channel. Welcome to A Conscious Time, and welcome to this video on how to be free of guilt for true freedom. So this is based on A Course in Miracles. I've the last few videos have been inspired by A Course in Miracles. Amazing book, curriculum. I've talked about it a little bit in my previous videos, so please have a look at that. It's profound beyond words and will change your life. Making sure you forget everything you think you know and starting again. Okay, so let's just jump into this video. For those that are new to this channel, we discuss all things navigating this world through the eyes of awareness, dropping judgment, dropping guilt. And once you do that, you'll see pivotal changes. Don't take my word for it. Go out there and experience it yourself and you'll see it. So let's jump into it. So before I carry on, what is the point of these videos? These videos are to ultimately realize that you have been given everything by God, and as I mentioned, it's also to bridge spirituality with tangible, real world applications as well. So the takeaway is that you can apply it, not airy fairy, but really concrete practices, and you can see the effect of these practices. And the point of these videos is actually to create a life of joy and prosperity. And unless you get these core practices right, winning the lottery, getting a new job, a new girlfriend, whatever the case may be, manifesting techniques. There's a lot of manifestation. I've talked about a bit of that in some of my videos, but how to manifest and all these kind of things, get a new car and materialistic things as well. Unless you get the core root right, everything else is just going to be flimsy and just hanging on a thread, if that's a good description. And that's the point of this, to get the root cause right, and that is you've been given everything by God. You have everything and you're lacking nothing. So let's just jump into it. Okay, so how to be free of guilt. We've spoken about guilt before in some of my videos, and what this channel is about, navigating this world through dropping guilt, dropping judgment. For me personally, I know that I've lived a life of guilt in my past. I know that I've dropped guilt and that the change has been profound. So what is guilt? Guilt is, it's quite in depth, so I'm not going to unpack guilt too much. I want to keep the short, sweet nutshell and just an easy takeaway that you can just go and apply very simply. And having said that, it's quite in-depth guilt, and we're talking quite high spiritually speaking, and so guilt essentially, and this is going to be based on A Course in Miracles, guilt is essentially that is experienced actually through the ego. So if you drop the ego, you will drop guilt. And I've mentioned before in my other videos, the ego is a false, illusory thought system. It's based on from the separation of God, a separate thought system, as opposed to being led by the Holy Spirit of God. And your will, as I've mentioned before, is the will of God. So the ego thought system is not real, but it's how most of us operate in this this world that we live in, and it's based on fear, the separation, as I mentioned. It's guilt. It's anything that is fear-based. It's death, demise, separation, isolated. Most of us are operating in this thought system as opposed to being led by the Spirit of God and knowing that we are part of God. So we essentially think with God. Does it sound airy-fairy? I'll just leave it at that. Let's not go too deep. Again, go and experience these things. Drop guilt and you will see the effect. Okay, so the root cause of guilt is ego, and the ego projects itself outwards, right? So the guilt is basically, if you're operating in guilt, it's because you're operating in the ego, and because the ego is a separate thought system, it has a guilt associated with it, as opposed to, the best way to explain it is to compare it to the Spirit of God or God. God is guiltless. God has nothing, He lacks for nothing. God gives everything. You might argue, yeah, but how does He, let these calamities and etc. happen in the world? So that's another discussion. And there is an answer for that, and there is a release for that, and ultimately, fear is an illusion, as I've mentioned before. So anything fear-oriented, and ultimately, so I'm not going to go too in depth that side. So God allows for things to happen, if I can just answer that, but He doesn't create those things. It might help to think that we are actually accountable and have created a lot of everything that is actually fear-based. We've actually created that. That's the power we have. But it's an illusion. It's not real. So don't want to go too in depth there. But the root of guilt is the ego. So it projects itself, and as opposed to God and the Holy Spirit, lacks for nothing. God has extended and given everything. So because you feel guilt, it's because you are operating in the egoic mindset. So let's just leave it at that. Keep it short and sweet. If you feel fear, if you feel guilt, if you feel judgment, it's egoic based and it's a false thought system. Try and switch that mindset, and you can do it in the present moment. Try and switch that mindset into knowing you have been given everything. God created you perfect in this present moment, whole and perfect. Again, we can unpack that, but it's going to take a long time just to know these certain things. If you're living in guilt, you're living in the ego, and you can drop that because it's not real. All right. You don't have to understand the ego. You just have to understand there's a false illusory thought system from the separation of God that operates. And if you're feeling that guilt, it's because you're in the ego. Switch that, led by the Holy Spirit, knowing that you are part of God, and you will see the change. Drop guilt, drop judgment. Switch that. You are doing the best you can navigating this world with the best intention based on your level of awareness and what you have been given, brought up with, etc. So I hope I'm making sense there. What I do want to do is I want to read a short script from, section from A Course in Miracles. It's a massive book. It's spirit-led. It's profound. I'm not even going to go into the dynamics of the book. It speaks for itself. It either resonates with you or doesn't in this point in time. So let's just jump into it, and I'll unpack it a little bit further. So, while you feel guilty, your ego is in command, because only the ego can experience guilt. So we've touched on that. This need not be. Watch your mind for the temptations of the ego, and do not be deceived by it. It offers you nothing. When you have given up this voluntary dispiriting, you will see how your mind can focus and rise above fatigue and heal. Okay, so we'll unpack that a little bit and as quickly as possible without going into too much detail. We've touched on the fact that if you feel guilty, your ego is in command. So. And because only the ego can experience guilt, and we've talked about this, and this need not be. You can drop that in a second. So watch your mind for temptations of the ego, and do not be deceived by it. So the ego thought system, false illusory thought system, bolsters itself in any way I've mentioned before, that it will bolster itself either, oh, woe is me, through depression, through feeling less about yourself, through feeling guilty, or it bolsters itself through, trying to make itself better than others. That's ego, and the ego is very cunning. It's a cunning thought system. So it will bolster itself anyway. So do not fall into that temptation, and do not be deceived by it. So the minute you feel that fear, anger, guilt, you are in the egoic thought system, right? And what can you do? You can pray to the Holy Spirit and say, Holy Spirit, guide my thoughts. That's it. End of story. Okay, so it offers you nothing. When you have given up the voluntary dispiriting, you will see how your mind can focus and rise above fatigue and heal. Okay, so I think I've touched on that point there, that it's dispiriting, so it's the opposite to the Holy Spirit. And I think I've actually covered most of the things there. The last part there, which is quite exciting, will lead on to the next video that I'm going to share with you, because once you have dropped guilt, you will see how your energy, your spirit changes. So you'll be able to rise above fatigue and heal. Does it sound airy-fairy? Well, we're going to unpack that as we go on in this channel and the videos to come, because ultimately all you have is your mind. And your mind, your body follows your mind. Once you change that guilt robs you of and we've talked about this in some of my other videos relating to David R. Hawkins. He talks about how different energies, different emotions invoke different energies, and some of them deplete them or add energy. So judgment and guilt will deplete you. So this is not so airy-fairy. You can unpack it right now as we speak. So when you rise above this, when you drop guilt, when you drop judgment, you will be able to heal. I mean, effectively, your body will be resonating on a different level. You won't have these depressing hormones, depressing chemical balances in your body that are depleting you. You'll have new energy to be able to heal and not feel lethargic and fatigue, etc., etc. But that's going to lead on to my next video. So I hope this makes sense. If you're feeling guilty, know that you are living in the false, illusory thought system of the ego, and know that God has given you everything. You are whole and perfect in this moment, and you lack for nothing. So you can switch that in an absolute instant. I don't want to waffle on you anymore. So I hope this has added a lot of value, and I hope it's made a lot of sense. Give me your like, give me your thoughts and sharings, and give me like, subscribe, share if you feel this adds value to you or other people's lives. And we'll check on the next one. Cheers.